Breakfast in Florida now costs $2. Same breakfast in Bangkok? $3, accompanied by the friendly smile of the saleswoman. 1 month's rent in California is enough for you to live for half a year in Da Nang, on a quiet beach with dollar coffee. Instead of asking me if I have enough money to live in America, then many people are asking why I should keep trying to live here anymore. And so, every month, thousands of Americans leave their homes. Not to evade taxes, not travel. They are being reborn, but on the other side of the world. Thailand, Vietnam. The two countries once considered part of the third world are now becoming havens for the American middle class. When a meal at home becomes a luxury, sobriety is the cheapest thing you have left. Why is the American dream, speaking Vietnamese and Thai? Stay to understand why the American dream has changed addresses. Can you believe it? A pound of beef in Texas is now more expensive than a domestic flight ticket in Thailand. It sounds absurd, but it's the reality of America in 2025. And that's just the eating part. The average rent in California is $3,500 per month. Meanwhile, in Chiang Mai, for just about $500, you can get a balcony, greenery, and the sound of birds in the morning. And in Da Nang, Vietnam, you can live comfortably on $200. $1 for coffee, $2 for a bowl of pho, and a foot massage is cheaper than a bottle of water at an American airport. More and more Americans are deciding to leave their home country. They didn't leave because they stopped loving America. They left because the numbers were no longer humane. A medical bill in Los Angeles can be equal to a whole year's living expenses in Vietnam. Insurance premiums, property taxes, service fees, everything is designed for you to survive, not to live. And in Asia, they discovered the opposite. A decent life doesn't require installments. An engineer in Ohio shared, in the US, he has to work overtime constantly just to pay the electricity and gas bills each month. However, when he arrived in Asian countries, he taught English for a few sessions each week, rented a beachfront apartment, went for morning runs, and ate seafood for dinner with just $0. He said, "Here, I don't get old, I just slow down." A simple saying, but enough to make an entire generation think. However, behind this wave of departures lies a long story. It's not just because of inflation or taxes, and because the American system is expensive both mentally. You have to pay with your health, time, and anxiety. You pay for safety, but you're still worried about losing your job. Paying for insurance, but still afraid of getting sick. Paying for education, but I'm still in debt until I'm 40. What about Asia? Many Americans express surprise at the safety coming from the community rather than the bill. The shopkeeper remembers you. The neighbors asked how I was doing. A glass of iced tea can save a bad mood. A paradox that makes us reflect. In America, people pay for peace of mind. However, in Asia, people can rest assured without having to pay too much. And perhaps the cheapest thing Americans find in Thailand or Vietnam is balance. There's no need to prove your success. No need to strain yourself to keep up with interest rates or the stock market. Just live life to the fullest. What about you? If you had the same amount of money, you could live comfortably in the sun and by the sea instead of struggling with bills. What will you choose? Stay and try to hold on to a fading dream, or move on to a place where that dream is still affordable? But the story isn't just about price. The fast-paced and hectic life in America makes it difficult for many people to stay. And that's also partly why many choose to leave. When they were young, people dreamed of speed. Now, everyone just wishes there was a pause button. In America, things move so fast you don't even know where you're going anymore. A day goes by amidst car horns, deadlines, and bills. Even dinner is measured in minutes, not stories. Meanwhile, in Thailand or Vietnam, Americans are relearning how to. You can live slowly and still survive. And there is an interesting fact that I believe no one has told you yet. After the pandemic, the community of middle-aged Americans living in Chiang Mai increased by over 35%. And in Da Nang, the number of American expats nearly doubled compared to 2018. It's not because they're retiring, but because they're tired of living like robots. In Bangkok, they say, "If you go slow, you'll see more." And it seems Americans have started to believe that. Here, they have time to watch the sunset, not through a car window. There's time for lunch, no need to fill up on a protein bar. Here, working efficiently doesn't mean working yourself to exhaustion. An IT employee who moved from New York to Saigon for work recounted that a day in America has 24 hours. Here, there seem to be 30. The words sound like a joke, but they hurt. Because it speaks a truth. In America, time is more expensive than gasoline. And in Vietnam, in the morning he cycles to the beach, in the afternoon he teaches a few English classes, and in the evening he goes out for drinks with his Vietnamese friends. But why does slowing down make them happier? Because in America, burnout is a badge of honor. Everyone is running. Everyone is busy. Everyone says, "I'm fine," but no one is truly okay. And in Asia, if you're tired, people say, "Take a break. Drink tea." A cup of tea can sometimes save an exhausted soul. It sounds paradoxical. In America, you have to pay to take time off. In Asia, people take time off, so they don't have to pay for a doctor. It sounds simple, but it's a philosophy of life. Not everyone understands until they sit in a cafe by the Mekong River, watch the locals laughing and talking, and realize, how long has it been since I last smiled? In Vietnam or Thailand, many Americans say they find themselves again. It's not because of the scenery, but because here they can live without being compared. You don't need to prove yourself with a bank account or car brand. A simple meal, a genuine smile, that's enough. In Asia, the clock still ticks, but people's hearts aren't driven by it. And perhaps that is the greatest luxury of the 21st century: peace. Not sold at Walmart, not shipped with Amazon Prime. Only found in places where you don't need to rush. If peace had a price, what would you be willing to pay for it? A debt at the bank or a one-way ticket to the East? When you were in the US, you were redundant, 50 years old, unemployed, and your resume was buried under thousands of automated emails from HR. But in Thailand or Vietnam, you're the teacher, the instructor, the fun-loving American, Uncle Bill, teaching pronunciation as perfect as Hollywood. The same person, just different coordinates. A real phenomenon is happening. The number of Americans living long-term in Southeast Asia has increased by over 40% in the past 10 years. Not just retirees, but also those who are mentally retired. They're not looking for a new job, they're looking for themselves. In Da Nang, there's a whole neighborhood jokingly called Little California, a cafe entirely for expats. In the morning, they talk about podcasts. In the afternoon, they share startup ideas. And in the evening, they discuss life philosophy. A guy who used to be a programmer in San Jose now runs a taco shop by the beach and says, "I work less, but I feel more." It sounds poetic, but it's true. In America, you are asked, "What do you do?" In Asia, people ask, "How are you doing?" And perhaps it was that small difference that woke many people up. Why is Asia so fascinating? It's not just because of the low cost of living or the beautiful scenery, and because it allows Americans to start over without being labelled. Here, no one cares if you were a CEO or a delivery person. You're just Mr. John, who tells good stories, Mrs. Susan, who bakes delicious cookies, and that is enough to be respected. Smart countries are opening their doors. Thailand has the smart visa for foreign professionals. Malaysia has Malaysia, my second home. And Vietnam easily issues long-term visas for English teachers, investors, and freelancers. All of this is creating a generation of digital nomads, people who work on laptops, earn money in the US, but live in Asia with genuine smiles. And then, something strange happened. The person who was once rejected by the American system became a life guide for the young generation of Asia. It's not about teaching how to get rich, but how not to be swallowed up by life. A beautiful paradox. They don't go to teach, they go back to school. In America, if you're not successful by the age of 40, you're a failure. In Asia, if you genuinely smile at 50, you've won. And perhaps it's the silent rebirth that few talk about. No need for billions, no need for fame, just to be myself, without asking anyone's permission. Freedom is not in the Constitution, it's included in the one-way plane ticket. And you? If you were given the choice between a safe but empty life and a new journey where you could truly live, what would you choose? Do you ever find yourself worrying, even when you've paid for peace of mind? Health insurance, security, taxes, government, they all say we protect you. But then one day, you go to the hospital for a dental checkup and receive a $1,000 bill. While in Vietnam, it's the same song, $40, plus a free smile. Trust in the system is collapsing like the stock market in 2008. According to Pew Research, only 16% of Americans believe the government is doing the right thing. That is, out of every 10 people, 8 suspect that everything is being run by luck. And don't forget, in Singapore, South Korea, and Vietnam, over 70% of people say they are satisfied with their governments. Sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? But those leaving the US for Asia are feeling that more and more every day. Why is that? Because in America, the healthcare, education, and social security systems are designed to profit, not to reassure. Every time you go to the doctor, you don't know which hurts more, your tooth or your wallet. Schools collect tuition fees like investing in stocks, but students graduating are still paying off their debts until they're grey-haired. Meanwhile, in Asia, you just need to walk into a hospital, get examined, smile, and you don't need to sign 10 liability waivers. Here, the system isn't perfect, but it works for people, not on their backs. A former soldier living in Arizona moved to Thailand after paying over $300,000 in medical bills for an illness he calls American stress. Now he lives in a 600-month apartment and was asked by Dr. Thai if he had breakfast yet. A question that no one in America has asked yet. He said, "Here I am both healed and treated like a human being." It sounds simple, but in reality, that's the biggest luxury in America right now. Trust in others. And perhaps this is why many Americans are leaving. Not because they hate America, but because they are tired of feeling like they have to be on guard against their own system. In Asia, they can comfortably believe that if they fall, someone will help. And in the US, they have to sign a contract before they fall. Americans don't run away from freedom. They're just looking to regain the feeling of being trusted. What do you think? Is it worth staying in a free society, but you no longer feel safe in your own life? There's an interesting paradox of the 21st century. In 1960, Americans flew to Asia to teach people how to develop. In 2025, Americans will once again fly to Asia to learn how to survive. It sounds funny, but it's really sad. The world has turned upside down, and few people have noticed. Vietnam's average GDP increased by over 300% in 2 decades. Bangkok now has a cleaner metro system than most subway cars in New York. And Singapore, once guided by the US on democracy, now has a higher standard of living than most US states. Meanwhile, in Detroit, you still see abandoned houses, and in San Francisco, homeless people are camping right next to the headquarters of billion-dollar tech startups. One side is running, while the other is still arguing about who should run first. Why is that? Because Asia is busy working, while America is busy arguing. Americans used to believe we were a model for the world. But now they look in the mirror and see a tired country. Meanwhile, in Vietnam and Thailand, people no longer dream of going to America. On the contrary, it is the Americans themselves who are dreaming of those places, where the streets are clean, the food is good, and smiles are not taxed. America once built walls to keep out immigrants. Now, Americans are voluntarily climbing over to get out. In the old days, they said going to America was a life changer. Now, it seems leaving America is the only way to change your heartbeat. What is the real impact? Middle-class Americans are starting to see the light of the East, not the Hollywood kind of mystical, but real. A society that is developing, yet still retains kindness. In Asia, they feel rejuvenated. They saw again the energy that America once had. Belief in tomorrow, in work, in community. Back home, everything seems to be just debate and polarization. Pride is reversing. The world is no longer asking what America is thinking, and ask what Asia is doing to move so fast. And Americans, instead of leading, are starting to relearn. What do you think? If the third world has now become the place where Americans seek their dreams, then could it be that the first world is the one that is asleep? Americans used to leave their homes to find the American dream. Now they are leaving their homes to rediscover that very dream. The only difference is that this time, the American dream isn't in New York or Los Angeles anymore, but in Da Nang and Chiang Mai. The reverse wave is growing strongly. According to United Nations data, the number of migrants from the West to Asia increased by over 22% in just a few years after 2020. A seemingly small number, but it's rewriting the global migration map. No longer Asian dreamers going to America, but American seekers going back east. Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia are becoming new economic and spiritual havens. Not just because it's cheap, but because here, people feel that life still has meaning. What is the mechanism of this transfer? It's very simple. When the system becomes unstable, people revert to their survival instincts. America, the symbol of freedom, has now become a symbol of weariness, expensive, divided, and disconnected. While Asia, once considered the third world, is testing version 2.0 of the American dream. Freedom with order, development with compassion. One side talks about innovation, the other is living in innovation. One side talks about diversity, while the other side practices it every day without needing a hashtag. There's a new generation of Americans. They don't settle, they move. No need for a national flag, no need for nationality. They work online, pay taxes in the US, have breakfast in Bangkok and dinner in Hoi An. And they no longer want to return, because here they feel the future is closer. You think you're just changing time zones. But in reality, you're changing centuries. Asia is living with the feeling that it's their turn now, while America, it seems, is still sleeping in its old glory. What once made America strong, the spirit of exploration, dedication, and the desire for freedom, is now found on the streets of Da Nang, in Chiang Mai coffee shops, where Americans sit typing on their laptops, working and smiling at the same time. This isn't just migration, it's the pivot of a dream. No longer the American dream, but the human dream, where people don't need a nation to validate their worth. Perhaps the world today no longer looks to America for hope, but rather at the Americans leaving, to understand what is being lost within the United States. Perhaps the American dream hasn't disappeared. It's just changed time zones and is waking up in Asia. If the world is spinning on its axis and you don't realize it, would you dare to spin along? Or would you continue to stand still and call that stability? People don't leave America because they've fallen out of love with it. They left because America no longer felt like itself. But perhaps there's still a way to keep them, not with promises, but with listening. Americans don't need another speech about freedom. They need to be able to leave the hospital without fearing homelessness due to medical bills. They need a system that says, "I care," instead of "please hold for the next representative." If America wants to keep its people, start with the smallest thing. Make life worth living, not worth bragging about. In Thailand or Vietnam, Americans feel a sense of community. People say good morning, ask how you are, and remember your dog's name. It's quiet, but it's something many Americans haven't felt in their own neighborhoods for years. America used to be proud of its community. Now is the time to restore it, before people have to fly halfway around the world just to feel cared for again. In America, the economy is growing, but workers are exhausted. And in Asia, they see societies that are small, but are trying to lift everyone up together. Sometimes, people don't need a superpower. They just need a country where everyone has the opportunity to be happy. America doesn't need to be faster. America just needs to be more fair. The world has changed, and there are lessons America now needs to relearn. From Singapore, learn how to run society effectively. From Vietnam, learn the spirit of unity. From Thailand, learn the art of living lightly. Because true power doesn't lie in being above anyone, but in knowing when to bow down to understand them. And here's the last thing. The world doesn't need a perfect America. The world only needs America to be brave enough to become human again. Keeping our people here is not done with money, but with the belief that living here is still worthwhile. In your opinion, what does America need to change to make people want to stay? Please leave your comments in the section below, as you might just be rewriting a new version of the American dream. Neon lights still shine on American streets, but many people have begun to turn off the lights in their hearts. They left. Not to run away, but to breathe. In the end, no one wants to leave forever. The Americans left, but most still remembered their homeland. They were just looking for a place where they could be themselves before returning to help America become itself again. And now it's time for me to hear from you. What do you think? If you had the opportunity to leave and live more freely, would you do it? Or do you still believe that America can be revived as long as we're willing to look back at what we're losing? Please leave a comment below. I read every line, not out of curiosity, but because I believe you are the one who is continuing the story of the American dream. If you find this video thought-provoking, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Each week, we will unpack together the true stories of America, its people, and how the world is changing. No sensationalism, no shouting, just honest conversations between people who have lived, understood, and still want to believe. What you hear today is not political or financial advice. That's a personal perspective, told through real-life experiences, data, and stories. You have the right to agree, the right to disagree, because it is precisely the difference in perspectives that made America great. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the next videos.